Good afternoon. And welcome. My name is Christy True. I'm the director of King County's Department of Natural Resources and Parks, and it's wonderful to see you all and to be here in person this afternoon. I'm very appreciative of all of you for being here to celebrate one of our region's champions for open space and historical preservation, Jim Ellis. And I want to extend a very special welcome to Jim's family who are here today. Thanks for joining us. It's really fitting in so many ways that we're at this place. It's a confluence really of many of the aspects of Jim's life, but certainly his support for parks and open space. Because we had the soccer fields up the hill, the Preston Fall City Trail, the historic Preston Community Center, and now the long-awaited open space and picnic area and the former mill site. No one knows more than Jim how important it is to be persistent, and this site certainly required persistence. I want to briefly talk about what lies ahead for this special location. This summer, construction on a number of community improvements will begin to transform this area. And first, when I say we, it's the Grandway, especially the Mountains to Sound Greenway, who's such an important partner for us. We'll be constructing a path and a tunnel to connect this location to the community center. And you all know how critical it is to be able to have that safe connection. It's really a game changer. We're also going to be working on building a new restroom and a parking lot. We anticipate this will be done by the end of the summer or end of this year. And I know as you all pulled in here, you probably thought, yeah, this parking lot really needs some help. We all have some wet feet. We're working with the community to help determine the next steps, the remainder of the property, including the kiln building behind us. And finally, future phases of work will include reconstructing the historic mill building and its saw that have operated here for so many years. Of course, none of this would have been possible without Jim Ellis leading the charge. His remarkable ability to build partnerships linked with a clear vision of civic improvement resulted in initiatives and efforts all across King County that continue to benefit everyone who comes here to live, work, play, and learn. I know we will hear many stories about Jim today, but I wanted to share one of my own. Many years ago, Jim invited me to have lunch at his home to review portions of his memoirs about the early days of Metro to make sure he had it right. Well, of course he had it right. He was such a great historian, but it was still really special to have that chance to reminisce with Jim anyway. And one thing I remember from that day, which was really striking, it was about the same time of year as we are here today, was a spectacular white dogwood outside his kitchen window along the driveway that came down to his house. Jim told me that it was just a twig given to him in a coffee can that he had planted decades before. Well, to me, I not only loved that, but it kind of seemed like a bit of a metaphor about Jim's life, where he starts with a smidge, or he and his wife, Mary Lou, start with a plate of chocolate chip cookies, and it grows into something very spectacular. We'll find a suitable place to plant this dogwood here at this site when we've got a lot of the heavy construction work done. Thank you all again for coming today, and please join me in welcoming Councilmember Sarah Perry.
Thank you so much, Christy. It's been such a pleasure to work. Give Christy a hand. She's just amazing. It's been a real pleasure these 6 months and 2 days that I've been here. I'm excited to be here in Preston. I raised my kids in North Bend area, the Valley, and this area is just very precious to our family. I'm excited to be here as we celebrate the renaming of the King County Parks Complex, which includes Preston Mill, Preston Athletic Fields, and the Preston Community Center as the Jim Ellis Memorial Regional Park at Preston. It's fitting that someone as impactful as the late Jim Ellis will have his name and legacy remembered here. It's such a great site in our community. Not only honors Jim's extraordinary life and work, but also his family's deep commitment to the Preston community. And this celebration is important for two main reasons. First, the Preston Park complex is a regional draw. It's important to the Preston community and beyond. Countless kids and adults alike come to this complex to enjoy the fields and open space, and it's a jewel in the Preston area that brings the entire community together. Second, it's a testament to the regional impact on our communities that Jim Ellis had as a civic leader who was deeply committed to preserving forests, rivers, farmlands, parks, lakes, and mountains across King County. I'd like to now introduce someone who is no stranger to Jim Ellis, former Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell. Ms. Jewell was the Secretary of the Interior from 2013 to 2017, managing an agency of over 70,000 employees, and was responsible for over 260 million acres of public land, just a little more land than we have here in District 3. During her term, Ms. Jewell won acclaim for her Every Kid Outdoors initiative, which made every fourth grade student in the nation and their families eligible for a free one-year pass to every U.S. national park. Besides being an avid outdoor enthusiast, Ms. Jewell also served on the board of the National Parks Conservation Association and helped to found Washington State's Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust. She's left a huge impact not only in our region but across the country. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Jewell.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Perry. Let's give her and the other public servants here a round of applause because they do a lot of heavy lifting and they don't get credit. And they have to put themselves out and run for election and sometimes lose, and so more power to you. Thank you so much. And to others like Christy that have devoted their time to public service. I have a deep appreciation. So it's sort of funny that we're standing here in Preston and we're honoring Jim Ellis. I have to say the reverse is also true. I want to thank Preston for being so deeply ingrained in Jim's childhood that he chose to say yes when asked if he would lead this effort around the Mountains to Sound Greenway after the activist march in 1990. So thank you, Preston and Raging River and Ellis family for your deep connections in this area. Jim's brother John is here, who I haven't seen in a while, but we are delighted to have you here as well, John. So when we think about Jim Ellis, it's hard to separate him from his story. Many of you know it, some of you don't, and I don't want to steal any of the Ellis family's thunder. But let's just say that a summer he spent very close to where we are all standing in many ways connected him to this place in a way that never left him, and I suspect shaped all of the things that we are now the beneficiaries of because of who he was. I had the very good fortune of being half Jim's age when the president of the bank that I was working for, a guy named John Mangles, turned down an offer to go on the board of the Mountains to Sound Greenway, but said, of course, we'll write a check. This was common for Jim. He'd go to the titans of industry, he'd ask them for money, and he'd ask them to join a board, and they'd say yes to the money, and then they'd recommend somebody else for the board. And for me, I was that lucky somebody else, a young whippersnapper, 33, 4, something like that. Jim was 68, so for any of you who are at that age or older, I just have to say, if you look at Jim, you're not done yet. So just take note. We also know that Jim's life, in so many ways, was shaped by his deep partnership with his wife, Mary Lou. And when I think of my life and how I've tried to shape it, I think of the mentorship Jim gave me in terms of how he lived his life in thirds. So how many of you know what I'm talking about? All right, just about everybody, which is fantastic. Work, family, or home, community. And of course, today we're here to talk about just one aspect of that, which is the community side. So we are a stone's throw, if you have a strong arm, from where the Mountains to Sound Greenway met and continues to meet, and that's in the Preston Community Center. And I mention that because as an early board member of the Greenway, we started meeting there not because it was convenient to many people that were in Seattle, but because it was also less inconvenient to people that were coming from the east side of the mountains. It was neutral territory. Sometimes it might have been an equal length of time to drive, even though it was far longer there as our traffic's gotten worse. But I remember having a discussion with Jim in those early days about, do we really need to buy everybody dinner? Amy might remember this. Because, the budget was a little small in those days, and, we didn't have sophisticated fundraising, and Jim was insistent that we bought dinner because it's all about relationships. So recently I've been thinking a lot about this phrase, which is progress moves at the speed of trust. Progress moves at the speed of trust. And if you think about all of the projects the Greenway's been involved in all of the very different political backgrounds and experiences and motivations of the people that have made things happen in the Greenway, they are very, very different. But the one thing that they have in common is they are human beings that have sat down across the table from each other, broken bread, and built trust. And that has been huge. And as, in this little job that I had in government, I thought about Jim all the time. I thought about him in terms of some of the, I've never had a job that's all about conflict. But being Secretary of the Interior is. Oil industries and environmental interests and endangered species and the need for lithium to run the batteries in my electric car in the parking lot, right? It's very difficult. But I thought of Jim often. I talked about the Greenway often because of the way we have had in this landscape truly win-win-win situations. A win for the environment, a win for the people of the region, and a win for the economic interests that have really continued to drive the success in this area, but also drive the increasingly large numbers of people onto our public lands. And thank goodness that the Greenway has been doing so much good work alongside so many partners, a lot of whom are here. The public agencies, the Forest Service, the Department of Natural Resources, the counties, both Kittitas and King. You think about the first acquisition, which was Rattlesnake Ridge from Weyerhaeuser that would have been houses. You think about Snoqualmie and North Bend not wanting to run together, but both wanting to thrive, and the acquisitions of the farms in between them. You think about, maybe you don't think about biosolids, but for a long time the Greenway thought about biosolids. What happens when you flush the toilet? And most people think of the ew factor, but the Greenway worked with King County to unlock county money for dealing with that, to put to open space with a partnership to Weyerhaeuser to put it to help grow, put it on the ground to help grow trees, and fund an education program so the kids in King County could get excited about what happened when they flushed the toilet. How great is that? And I'll just briefly mention how difficult it was for the Greenway to support a gravel mine, and how it's a perfect illustration of the complexity and the beauty of bringing people together to find common ground, to work on those intersections of interests and not the points of difference. So, Christy referenced this. Jim Ellis has written a book. You read a little bit of it. I've read a little bit of it. Whatever I've read has been amazing. And I don't know if History Link is here. Jennifer and Marie, we are in the process of raising money, and I think we're very close to having everything that we need to get the book published in a way that works for the family, honors all of Jim's work, makes it something that you can actually lift up yourself, because Jim has lots of words. Some will be available online, some will be available in print. Everything will be available to future generations to understand this incredible man and the lessons of leadership that I had the good fortune of learning firsthand, and so many of you did too. But everybody can learn through his own words when this book is published. And I just want to end by saying that it's getting more difficult to do what the Greenway does. It's getting more important to do what the Greenway does. This is a very expensive place to live. I don't have to explain that to any of you, and I certainly don't have to explain it to the people that are living in tents and can't find affordable housing and all those things that are a huge issue. I'm proud of King County. I'm proud of where Seattle's going for really working hard on this issue. But there are more people here, and they need places to go, and that the real estate is getting more expensive. So the Greenway and the Trust for Public Land are banding together to raise money for the Jim Ellis Fund for Land Conservation. So if you'd like to help us with that, we would welcome your help. The target is $5 million. We're well on our way, but we still have a ways to go, and that is money that will be recycled over and over again to option land and hold it and stop it from getting developed or whatever use might be incompatible with the greenway, so we can then find a long-term takeout. So we'd welcome that, and Amy Brockhouse, John Hoekstra, I'm sure Mike's back there. Speak with any of them, and they can talk to you about that. So I just want to say that the Jim Ellis Memorial Regional Park at Preston, which is a real mouthful, maybe it'll get shortened over time, but it epitomizes everything that Jim represents. It connects people to nature in a way that they understand what we have. It maybe begins on a ball field for somebody that's never gotten out into the wild lands. For those brothers and sisters of the people playing, I hope they play on the margins, because that's where the really cool stuff is. But with the acquisition of this site, with the community center, with the raging river, with the consistent white noise from I-90, what's not to like about this wonderful place? And that is such a great representation of who Jim is. So thank you for the opportunity to speak and to share my love of the Greenway, my love of Jim and everything that he stood for. And his family has been super supportive as well. So it is my great pleasure right now to introduce to you one of Jim's sons, and that is Bob Ellis, an educator by profession, who I suspect, along with his sister Lynn and his brother Steve, probably made a few sacrifices over the course of their life for their father's dedicated work to community service. But they also reflect Jim's offspring in terms of their caring for our community and their willingness to give back, and how much they appreciate what their father gave to them. So with that, please join me in welcoming Bob Ellis.
It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, along with my sister Lynn Erickson and our families, for this rededication of the Preston Park in honor of our father, Jim Ellis. You all may be wondering, what is the connection between our father, Jim Ellis, and the city of Preston? Well, it's pretty darn interesting. Our family was an early pioneer family. Preston was a town of immigrant Swedish loggers. Our grandfather loved to fish and took his two oldest sons on a fishing trip up the raging river in 1937. They found a great fishing hole, and our grandfather offered to buy the lot around the fishing hole and give it to them if they developed it by themselves according to the rules of the Homestead Act. 15-year-old Jim and 13-year-old Bob didn't hesitate. They set up a camp and began a 2-year effort to build a log cabin. They cut trees on the land, hired a local hand with a blind horse, costs less that way, to haul more logs down to the site. They bought shingles and boards from the Preston Mill, which were made right here when it was working, and actually finished a one-room cabin in 2 summers, complete with a guest cabin. The summer of 1939 was an idyllic time for the brothers. They welcomed friends to join in the finishing touches, and then Jim was off to Yale, and Bob went back to Franklin High School. Pearl Harbor changed everything. Bob enrolled in the infantry under General Patton, and Jim enrolled in the Army as a meteorologist. He married Mary Lou Erling in 1944. Bob was killed in action in Western Germany in March of 1945. Jim wanted to request a transfer to the front in Germany, but Mary Lou convinced him that instead he should make his life count for his brother and dedicate his life to the preservation of the great outdoors. And so we are all here together. Thank you, Mary Lou. And it was a love that they had both shared. Jim's formative years in Preston influenced his many civic projects. He recognized the importance of parks and sports in developing a community. Jim's Forward Thrust initiative created many parks and gathering places. Jim's creation of the Greenway preserved the open spaces of the region so that all future generations can forever share the natural beauty that he and his brother enjoyed growing up here in Preston. This wonderful park, here in the heart of the Greenway, encompasses all of the values which Jim held dear. My sister and I are sure that our father would be honored to know that this park, alongside the raging river, continues his legacy. Our family would like to thank all of those who worked so hard to make this possible. Thank you all.
I'll do the best I can. Everybody's not here to see me, they're here to see Ned. He was out doing his work today out in the Oxbow Loop in the Middle Fork and having a great time already. So I'm Doug Mcclelland, and I worked for 40 years for the Department of Natural Resources, but since 1986, my wife Christy and I have lived in Preston. So we live on a log home up on the top there, and for a while I got to be the mayor of Preston, although that made certain council members, this one not included, not happy that there's really not a mayor because this is not a city. So I just love the opportunity to be here, and now I'm the president of the Mountain to Sound Greenway Trust for 5 more days. Everybody, I want you to see Allison. Everybody wave your hand. You should focus your efforts with Allison, okay? That would be great. But this is an awesome honor to rename this park for Jim Ellis. And I just again like to thank for the Ellis family. John, so glad you could make it here. I see your brother just in your face. It's just amazing for everyone. Bob and Jean, Peter, Margie, Andrew, David, Len, and Mark Erickson, thanks for being here. I think that just lets you know what Jim meant to you as a family, but he had a very big family, and that's why everyone is here. I'd like to thank former executive King County Ron Sims. He was a brand new county executive when he came out to Preston and rode around in the back of a pickup truck with community residents and flew in his first helicopter and looked at what Sammamish Plateau looked like and saw the development and growth coming, and he went on up into Upper Preston for a little celebration and gathering, and he took my son Jacob for a walk. Because Jacob was talking to him about how there was no Little League field to play in. There were no parks in Preston. So Ron took Jacob for a walk and then left with his car and drove away. And everybody said, well, what did Ron say to you? And Ron said, he said, I promised you, Jacob, a park in Preston. And so there's people here like Larry Phillips and Mark Solito and others that implemented what Ron said, which was, let's have a park in Preston. And I wanted to pass on someone, and this is for Mary Lou, and this is Margaret McLeod. Margaret McLeod was the interagency trail coordinator. From the vision that she got from Jim and others, she put in for a federal iced tea grant that got the money to buy the mill site in the first place, and none of us really even knew she had done that. So out of her efforts, this park was purchased and it was added to this, so we need to add that to it. Greenway representatives Nancy Keith and Ken Konigsmark are here. And Jim, up on the 51st floor of the Columbia Tower, would meet every Thursday from what time? 10 till noon. Yeah, till noon. I would get my phone call from Ken at 12:30 telling me what I am supposed to do based on what Jim wanted accomplished that following week. So I think my real boss was not the Commissioner of Public Lands, but it was Jim Ellis, and I learned that very on, as many in this group found that out, which is awesome. I also want to thank a few community members here. Any of you had the joy of meeting Randall Nelson? Randall grew up here in Preston, and every time we did a walk through the mill or through where the ball fields are or something else, Randall would show the community what was going on here. And another community member who just passed away this last year, Pearl Moore, at the age of 104. Jim and Pearl went to the church here in town the last few years together and sat next to each other at the church those last 4 or 5 years that Jim was here with Pearl. And Pearl also, just for a little fact of things, she was 102, and our driver's license people gave her a 5-year license. And she was driving to the Costco and to church, and I think she finally gave it up that last year or two. But somebody here in state representation might want to think about maybe having more than 5-year license. That's crazy. Charlie Scott in the back and Jones & Jones. They did the first original Preston vision and helped us put together the document that created the vision for Preston that the county council funded. They also, Charlie worked on the very easy King County permit for development of the Preston Mill site. Is that right, Charlie? Yeah, that's the politically correct question. Probably one of the most difficult permits for development has been here, right, Christy? Yes. But it's going to be beautiful, and I think it's wonderful that it's completed. And then there are some folks here from the restoration crew for the Greenway that were here today and have been working on restoring this amazing piece of property. So I'd like to thank the work from the King County Flood Control and the Snoqualmie Watershed Forum, the money that's been brought forward by that, and the fact that youth get to be involved and learn these stories and learn about this property and this amazing place. It's because of the legacy that Jim helped leave for all of us, and I really appreciate that. So in closing, we have all learned so much from the Ellis family, your dad, your brother, and we have appreciated that opportunity, and we've passed on that story from person to person to person. Deliver more, promise less, wear belts and suspenders when you get a project going, break bread with your friends, enjoy what's going on, make the person who was the most difficult get the most credit for the project that you were working on. All those things that make Sally survive her time as the Secretary of the Interior. But I just want to say thank you very much for coming today. Walk around and check out this park. Go up to the ball fields and watch the kids playing on the ball fields and have a wonderful time. Even check out the amazing graffiti inside that building. It is top-notch, high quality. I don't know what Christy's going to do with that, but that's just a part of it. And just remember, think about the fact that this legacy's here. That cabin that Jim built is still on the river, still with the family. The community club is still where there's dances and gatherings and where the Mountain to Sound Greenway meets. And just thank you for coming to Preston and being a part of that vision. Thank you very much.
That's all of our program, but I think if for anybody who is comfortable, we would like to get everybody up here to take a picture.